So speaking of James Comer, I've actually got a clip for you all in which even a Newsmax host is calling out the Republicans, saying, where is the evidence brought by James Comer's investigation into President Biden? Where is the evidence of an impeachable offense? But before we play that clip and you see that Republican's response, I want to draw your attention to something else in the ballpark. So again, congressional Republicans, they're not trying to compete in the marketplace of ideas. They're not trying to compete on policy. They are trying to use their majority to hurt President Biden politically through Hunter Biden. And Democrats are basically trying to call their bluff in the minority. They're saying, okay, listen, if your position is that we really need to look into the corruption of politicians and their families and nepotism, how about while we're looking into Hunter Biden, we look into Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who actually had a position in the Trump White House, whereas Hunter Biden never did in the Biden White House. And before we get into how James Comer responded, Luke, I'm curious, what do you think about Jamie Raskin and them calling the Republicans' bluff here?
So I love this, and here's this from the Rolling Stone. Democrats push to subpoena Jared Kushner's Saudi-backed investment firm. I love that almost Jamie Raskin is going, all right, you want to play this game? Let's play this game. We can, what's the phrase? We can dish it. Wait, we can dish it as much as you can serve
we
it.
Can take, right, or something some sort of like serving or culinary metaphor.
Serving and, food and such.
Well said, Luke.
Exactly. That was unexpected. So it's finally doing a little bit of what Josiah especially, and I sort of call on Democrats to do, which is lean more into, for a just cause, going as aggressively politically at the GOP as they go at Democrats. I don't think they should ever sacrifice principles as the GOP does and be dishonest, but at least here you're talking about families benefiting from the president. You haven't actually uncovered all these different allegations you've brought against President Biden. But if we want to just talk about general nepotism and benefiting from your father's position of authority, then let's talk about it. But your guy is going to have to be included. And then you can take it away with James Comer's response.
So I'll just want to say before we get to the bottom of that article where the response is delivered, and it's hilarious in its shamelessness. I just want to say James Comer has repeatedly, and I know Luke's covered it, I know I've covered it on my channel, James Comer has repeatedly acknowledged that what Jared Kushner did during his time in the White House was probably super suspect, that it crossed the line of ethics. That's actually what precipitated this challenge from Jamie Raskin in the first place. So they know, they've openly admitted Jared Kushner's probably done some dirty stuff. Which brings us to the bottom of the article, if you want to show it, where his spokesperson just says, this is nothing more than an attempt to distract from the mounting evidence of Joe Biden's involvement in his family's influence peddling schemes. If Ranking Member Raskin was truly concerned about ethics in government, then he would join Republicans in our investigation of the Bidens' blatant corruption. Just an absolute shameless dismissal. But Luke, they said mounting evidence, right? So do you think they have something?
Well, let's see what a right-wing Newsmax host had to say. Take a look at this.
Congressman, I followed this reasonably closely. I don't have any sort of behind-the-scenes, closed-door interview documents. I can't get access to those. But what I don't understand is this. I mean, what I've seen so far makes things look really shady involving Hunter Biden. But I don't see exactly what it is that you maintain are high crimes and misdemeanors which would warrant an impeachment. So exactly what is it that the president did to either take money illegally or change policies? Tell me exactly what it is. Is it getting the prosecutor fired in Ukraine? Is that it, or what are you focusing on?
And before you see the response, just prepare yourself for the word salads of all word salads. Try to follow what he's saying, okay?
Well, there's a lot. And obviously that the firing of the Ukrainian prosecutor is something that we need to further develop. I go back to, if I can, the investigation that came out of the Ways and Means Committee, where you had these agents who talked about that they were stymied in their investigation, and specifically the WhatsApp message that we all know about, where Hunter Biden was communicating with this Chinese emissary, and he talked about that his father was right there. Well, if his father truly was right there, that leads to not only concerns from people in my district, but I think people across the country, and that leads to high crimes and misdemeanors. The problem that I've got, among others, is that those two agents testified that they were stymied by people within the Department of Justice and the IRS.
But that seems to me, I mean, directly, my first question is that the Attorney General is responsible there, and I've got a beef with the Attorney General about him looking the other way in this Fulton County jail, which I think is deplorable. But do you have anything, I mean, are you saying that the President told the Attorney General just, look the other way and don't do anything? I mean, it seems to me is that the Attorney General would be someone I'd want to ask questions of.
Well, you're right. Kind of backtracking a little bit, we want to hear from the Attorney General. We want to hear from U.S. Attorney and now Special Counsel David Weiss. But
So there it is. A lot of words said, but not a lot said. And quickly,
no substance.
No substance. All these different narratives get intertwined and confusing. And so what are we even talking about? Let me quickly kind of give you the disclaimer, and then we'll fact check some of that. And then we'll go on to more. So stick around for all of it. But no one's denying that Hunter Biden, of course, benefited from, as people do in the Hollywood world and business and politics and all of it, from his last name, and wanted to sell, as Devin Archer testified to, the illusion of access. The question is, was there actually that access? Was Biden engaged in wrongdoing? That's what's relevant to our political conversation, because Hunter Biden's not engaged in the administration in any way, shape, or form. And so on that, they'll say Biden was bribed, and then when pressed for specifics, you saw it there, maybe they'll say Hunter Biden benefited from his last name. Well, that's not the same thing whatsoever. Or they'll point to things like Victor Shokin, you heard him reference, was Biden pushed to get Victor Shokin, the top prosecutor in Ukraine, at the time fired. And the story goes, according to the right-wingers, inaccurately, that the reason for this is because Burisma, the Hunter Biden company where he was working, wanted this top prosecutor to be fired. So Biden was bribed to do it, or just to help his son. He did it. And then we learned through Devin Archer, bombshell, Republican witness, oh my goodness, former business associate of Hunter Biden, that actually Burisma wanted Victor Shokin in that position of authority because maybe he was technically overseeing an investigation into Burisma, but they knew he was corrupt and wasn't actually going to seek accountability. And so it was exactly where they wanted him, and they wanted him in that position of authority, Victor Shokin, and Biden pushed to get him fired. So he did something in direct opposition to his son's company's interests. And he was supposed to have been bribed for that. That doesn't make sense. Or the IRS whistleblower thing he brought up. And then I promise I'll throw it over to you. It takes a while, Josiah, to fact check. Easier to lie than it is to go through and properly fact check.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I can't believe you're doing it this concisely in this amount of time, because I feel like we could spend 2 hours on it.
Thank you. And so the last thing on this is the other story that you heard a reference that was supposed to be a big scandal was IRS whistleblowers, Republican hearing, and they say that Merrick Garland or Biden is interfering in the David Weiss investigation into Hunter Biden. That, unrelated to what we're talking about here, but instead is him lying on a federal form in relation to getting a firearm because he was addicted to a controlled substance and he said he wasn't, and also avoiding taxes. And so that investigation, they were saying that David Weiss wasn't being given the authority that he wanted. But then David Weiss wrote a letter to the committee saying, no. I just don't want that authority right now, being the special counsel status. If I needed it, I could get it from Merrick Garland. Don't worry. All is well. He's telling the committee this, and they're still pushing the idea. And then David Weiss gets special counsel status right after he requests it, so that it all falls apart. There's my fact check.
Breathe in that brown bag. I mean, no, it is. I think that, again, there's a quote like attributed to Mark Twain where it's like a lie travels halfway around the world in the time it takes for the truth to lace up its boots. And this is a great example. The thing is, though, how effective are the lies? Well, some evidence to indicate not nearly as much as Republicans want it to be effective, but there's also some evidence to indicate it's certainly more effective than we'd like. So first things first, and we're just going to look at the headline there, but I mean, according to poll after poll after poll, Luke, as I'm sure you're aware, most Americans as of yet don't see much of a basis for an impeachment against President Biden. So that's good news for democracy. It's good news for the president. It's good news for Democrats, right? And bad news for the Republicans. But there is some sobering news as well, because another Washington or WAPO article has evidence to indicate that because of the flood of misinformation coming from the GOP, more and more Americans are perceiving President Biden and his family to be corrupt. Not quite as corrupt, according to polls, as Donald Trump and his family. But this is the result of persistent propaganda from the GOP. And I guess the only thing I want to say before I turn it back to you is this is why I think it's so important for us anytime we talk about Hunter Biden, even though some people may say, well, it's a whataboutism. No, it's really not. You got to talk about Jared Kushner here because it goes back to the asymmetry of expectations. The Republicans are banking on you and I and everybody else, even people watching who are sympathetic to the president, to grade Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Democrats on a curve and just price all the shenanigans going on with Donald Trump and his family and Jared Kushner, just kind of price it in. It's just, that's Trump, right? That's just zany old Trump. It's really important that we try to reclaim the narrative in a way that's much more fact-based than what the GOP is doing. I mean, what do you make of this? That most Americans don't support an impeachment, but also an increasing number of Americans are starting to view President Biden and his family almost as bad as Donald Trump and his family.
It's exactly what we talk about with the Republican Party being good at one thing, and that's branding. They're able to brand their way into really not actually implementing policies that benefit the lives of their constituents, but still shifting the perception of America into believing what they're doing is justified, believing Biden's caught up in criminality and they've been able to prove it. And it's pretty depressing to realize that, because if you keep up with the day-to-day, it seems so obvious that it is coming from such a dishonest, hypocritical place, as you point out with the Trump family. But to Americans, they're able to have their minds impacted broadly in ways that seem pretty, at least disturbing to me. And as an example of, while we're on the subject, kind of what is constantly being pumped out in right-wing media on the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden stuff, I try to keep up with what's the latest story coming from right-wing media about Hunter Biden, daily stuff coming out on it. What's the scandal of the day? And yesterday or a few days ago, I saw this clip from Russell Brand about now Biden's been caught using pseudonyms in his emails. And this is proof of his criminality. I'll explain why it's absolutely not, but here's what you would hear if you went to right-wing media on this subject.
Joe Biden has been using secret pseudonyms to conceal his identity. Maybe that's connected to the fact that Donald Trump was right. Millions were made in those
And before continuing, don't ask me where his shirt went. I don't really know.
energy deals with China and the Ukraine. Could those two things be connected? Hello there, you 6.5 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us today for this voyage to truth and freedom. Turn on the notification bell and subscribe. My name is Robin Waring. I'm your host. Sorry, I'm actually called Russell Brand. Joe Biden has been using a host of pseudonyms, but don't get suspicious as a result of that. There's a whole host of reasons that people use pseudonyms, and let me talk you through them. Sometimes use a pseudonym to hide your identity because what you're involved in is either criminal, illegal, or shameful in some way. That's it. That's the only reason anyone would ever use a pseudonym.
So that's the only reason, to conceal criminality, he says. Or it's in line with, as a Time magazine article pointed out, what countless high-ranking officials in the U.S. government do with their emails. Why, you might ask? And I was going to read excerpts, but here, Biden was following a common practice among senior government officials, hoping to thwart hackers as well as prevent spammers from guessing their address and clogging their inbox, according to a White House official. If it was all their actual names that they used in all their emails, it would be really easy to guess Joe.Biden or whatever at whitehouse.gov. So they'll come up with pseudonyms to prevent, as it talked about, their spammers or hackers, etc. Why would that be left out of the conversation from Russell Brand? Well, because a dishonest narrative is being pushed. And again, if you want to talk about the honest facts when it comes to how Hunter Biden benefited, did he here, there, blah, blah, we can have a conversation there and in relation to other people, but not if you're coming drooling at the mouth in a dishonest way, trying to prove something no matter where the facts lead.
Yeah, it's just it's absurd. And it's so funny because every time somebody mentions Russell Brand, I just fondly remember him from like Forgetting Sarah Marshall and some of my favorite comedies. I keep forgetting that he is like slipped into like the howling abyss of like right-wing conspiracism and like stumbling his way through political commentary. It's awful. It's just, yeah, this is yet another thing that unless the GOP defies their current trajectory, I guess I have to always make room for that little asterisk, right? That little possibility. This is just another nothing burger, right? I mean, it's just absolute scrambling for anything to justify just another week of investigations. They are living like in terms of their credibility with respect to the Hunter Biden investigations. It's like paycheck to paycheck for them. It's like just let's get to the end of the week. Let's get to the end of the week. Let's get to the end of the week.
That's hilarious that you say maybe they'll defy expectation and prove something. Because I was thinking the other day, as I was kind of walking through trying to understand what's going on in right-wing media, imagine if they got something real criminal, how long it would take to get the word out to people and for it to be believed because of them being the boy who cried wolf, you know? Everything we proved it. And if they actually were able to in one of these situations, it would be really hard to have people believe them, at least initially, until the evidence was thoroughly brought forward and disseminated.
No, 100%. I mean, like it's the skepticism that they are encouraging in the American people. Again, we talked about this in previous collaborations. They get called out by, obviously we recently played that clip of Newsmax, but they get called out by Fox News left, right, and center all the time. Peter Doocy, or Steve Doocy rather, and you know, even Maria Bartiromo. They're all like, "You got the goods now? You gonna tell us what your actual evidence is?" Like my favorite one. Do you remember when James Comer was asked, "What policy is it that you say that Joe Biden changed?" And he's like, well, you know, we're looking into it. You know, like it's just you can like
that's what
see.
We want to find
like,
out.
Yeah.
I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for watching. For the outro on this video, I want to plug Josiah's channel. Hit them with it, Josiah.
Hey everybody, I appreciate you watching. You can find me at youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. One word, pondering politics. If you like progressive commentary that focuses on coalition building with other elements of the left and calling the Republican Party out for what it's become, I hope you'll view my channel, give me a like and subscribe and some feedback. Again, youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. Thanks again.